Oh, hello and welcome to What Are We Talking About with Jamie Jakes. I am him, and today we are going to go over what we learned from week 1 of the NFL preseason. That is right. We are going to do winners and losers for fantasy football. We're going to go over a lot of injury news that we've had over the past couple of days, and we're going to tell you how that affects this fantasy football season as your drafts are fastly approaching. So how we approach the preseason, we do have concrete news like injuries and a lot of the other stuff. We're going to have to read the tea leaves. How I approach the preseason, I don't really care about the actual production from the players. I'm really looking for the skill positions, how well they're blocking, if they're being trusted with the football, and what they're being trusted to do, what they're being asked to do, and where they are being played. Are they being played with the ones? Are they being played with the twos? Are they all the way deep down the depth chart? And we'll probably never see them again for meaningful snaps in the NFL. This is all really important information to have right now, especially with rookies. So let's get right into it. The Lions and the Giants played Thursday night, and not a lot of surprises out of the Lions. Didn't see any starters play, including Jameson Williams. I say that would be probably the biggest takeaway from that side of the football. Jameson Williams slotted to be probably the ex-receiver for this football team. The news that Jahmyr Gibbs got a hamstring injury on Monday is rather consequential. He's currently going kind of at the end or the middle end of the first round in these redraft leagues at the moment. He does have a hamstring. Sounds like he'll be ready for week 1. Maybe he'll be a little bit limited. So how I'm approaching it in drafts at the moment is I am skipping on him, Jonathan Taylor and Saquon, taking my shots on him. If he falls past them, I am going to go ahead and take Jahmyr Gibbs. On this channel, we really don't like Marvin Harrison, Olave, any of those guys that are going in the beginning of the second round in terms of receivers. So we're really stacking up in the running back position early, which is, I think, really beneficial in best ball because we're kind of zigging when other people are zagging. Going heavy wide receiver early on in these drafts. Hendon Hooker also slotted to be the number 2 for the Lions. He did sustain an injury in the game. Sounds like he will be out for a couple of weeks. The Lions signed a guy to kind of fill in for him on the roster while he's out. I'm not concerned about it. I think Hendon Hooker's the number 2 there, and he looked fine in his performance in the preseason. On the other side, we saw a lot of starters play, including Malik Neighbors, who got locked down by the number 3s for the Lions. Haha, just kidding. But he did not get a reception or a target. He surprisingly wasn't super mad about it. He had a little bit of foot injury as well after that game. Sounds extremely minor. He's doing interviews right now. He should be ready to go to start the season. I don't think I'd be drafting him right now. With all the other wide receivers that are going in his neck of the woods, seems like a bad idea to draft him. Because at the end of the day, if he gets a 30-35% target share in that offense and Daniel Jones matches his best performance in the NFL in terms of passing yards, which is like 3,200, you're still having a tough time for Malik Neighbors to get to 1,000 yards. He could change the offense. I love him in Dynasty. Just redraft where he's going in best ball at the moment. Not a great value. In some other leagues, he is a little bit deeper down in the average draft position in the ranking order that each platform provides. So in certain instances, I will take him, but don't be taking him before guys like DJ Moore and the like. And a big performer in the game was Eric Gray. Now, I do have some inside news on the guy. I actually know his personal trainer, and he's been talking him up all offseason. And I kind of always rolled my eyes like, hey, I get it. He's your guy. Like, you're working with him. That's cool that you get to work with an NFL athlete. But at the end of the day, I think he's like a practice squad guy on this team. He looked incredible in the game. Granted, it was against like the number 3s and the Lions, number 4s and the Lions defense probably won't make the roster on the Lions defense of side of things. But Tyrone Tracy was also utilized a lot in the game. He's a rookie coming into the Giants organization, and he didn't look as spectacular to me as Eric Gray did. And on top of it, we saw him get a bad injury in practice today. But I think Eric Gray might be slotted in. There are going to be maybe a Bronco or 2 getting cut or getting traded. So we'll keep an eye on that. I think they're happy with Singletary there. I think he's like a sneaky good 0 RB or hero RB build type of guy where you can get a starter late in drafts. Giants offense isn't going to be great, but he's going to get enough volume. He's going to get enough receptions, I think, in this offense to make it worth your while. So Singletary has got to keep your eye on. Next, we'll have the Panthers and the Patriots. The Panthers, the big takeaway I had was Mingo's usage. He was in the game when the twos, when the threes were on the football field. Of course, we had Xavier Legette out with his ankle injury. He's back at practice, which is super encouraging. My take on it is Legette is slotted, despite what the depth chart might say, the unofficial depth chart might say. I think Legette will be slotted to start with that team week 1. Obviously, Deontay Johnson will be out there as well. He didn't play. Mingo did play. Mingo's been with the team for over a year with the same quarterback. He was a rookie last year. I think Xavier Legette is slotted despite his ankle injury to gain the starting role week 1. And we'll see if that offense can look a little bit better. Chuba Hubbard didn't play as well. So I would say he is slotted in to be the bell cow for the whole season. If you listen to the channel whatsoever, we are not big fans of Jonathan Brooks coming off of this ACL, at least in terms of this year. So Chuba Hubbard, an amazing 0 RB sleeper add-on to your team. On the Patriots side of things, I think the big takeaway there in terms of usage would be Jalen Polk. He's got a very narrow margin of error to be fantasy relevant this year as a rookie. He's got to have a quarterback who's good. We don't know if that's going to be Drake May or Jacoby Brissett. They've got to figure out that offensive line. They got to figure out the offense as a whole. All the reports coming out of camp at the moment are that the Eagles' defensive line is absolutely tearing up the Patriots' offensive line. I think they're really going to struggle on offense. Probably going to be one of the worst offenses, bottom 3 offenses in the league this year. And asking a rookie to overcome all of this with either Jacoby Brissett or a rookie quarterback throwing the football and Drake May, I don't think it is a great value anymore. I think there's a lot more guys deeper in these drafts, if you are doing those best ball drafts, that are a little bit more of a better option. Greg Dortch, DJ Chark, guys are going to start. Even Johnny Wilson, who we'll get to in a little bit, I think are pretty decent options. And Yosevach over there for the Cincinnati Bengals are all a lot better option at this point than Polk. I would just skip by him. He's entirely off my draft board. Jalen Polk, in terms of dynasty, I'm not super concerned, though. I do believe him as a talent. I just think bad situation we're getting him in New England to start his career, and I don't see him having the opportunity to catch for a meaningful amount of volume, meaningful amount of yards. Scoring touchdowns is really what it's all about in fantasy football. I don't think Polk is going to have the opportunity to do that this year, even if he is really good at football. Which brings us to Miami and Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons did not show us much, partly because they didn't have a lot to show us. They do not have a lot of depth on this roster, it turns out. They did feature their rookie quarterback. Michael Penix in the game. He looked fine. Granted, he was thrown to kind of like the backup, so you give him a little bit of slack in terms of his pass yards per attempt. I thought he looked fine. Didn't show me anything that was super concerning. Didn't show me anything that was insanely impressive because it is preseason. Let's be real. On the Miami side of things, they also didn't show pretty much anything at all. Their rookie running back, Jalen Wright, did see a lot of action. He had 10 carries, and he looked good. But since he got those 10 carries, and I think we know that it's going to be a Raheem Mostert A-chain show over there in Miami, I think he's going to be kind of like a backup if somebody goes down or a change of pace, breather back. He might get 2 or 3 attempts a game if he's lucky. I don't think he's going to be fantasy relevant this year. And in best ball redraft, I wouldn't draft him at all. I really still believe, since Raheem Mostert didn't play, wasn't a big surprise they didn't play. He's an older veteran anyway. I think he's going to get the lion's share of the running attempts on this offense, and A-Chain will again come in and get another 11 or 10 carries per game and just be super efficient. I think Raheem Mostert is an insane value in drafts at the moment, and A-Chain is a little bit rich for my blood just because his volume isn't going to be there, and I like volume guys if I'm taking them at the end of the second round. And that brings us to the Texans and the Steelers. On the Texas side of things, they started their guys to start the game, including Dameon Pierce, who ran with the ones. There is a Mixon injury that's been looming. I think Pierce is kind of like a sneaky ad right now. We'll see how he looks in the regular season. He didn't look great in terms of production. He had 1 yard per carry and 4 carries in this game. But the real story of the game is the receiver room, which will be the story all season, I think. We saw the best receiver on the team, who I think is the best receiver on the team, Tank Dell, actually sit out in 2 wide receiver sets. Didn't like that. We saw Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins on the football field, but when Tank Dell got on the field, guess what happened? It was like a 60-yard bomb for a touchdown, broke a couple tackles, looks absolutely insane. It's going to be a tough time keeping that guy off the field. Even if he doesn't see the volume that I'd like to see him get, I think still if he's on the field 60, 70% of the time, which I expect him to be, he's still going to produce really well. Stephon Diggs comes off the field a lot. He takes his breathers. He's a veteran. He's an old man. And I think he's kind of washed. I think it's going to be a problem personality-wise in that locker room. But a little bit concerning for Tank Dell. I still have my belief that he'll be in terms of fantasy half PPR production, the number 1 on that offense, and then Nico Collins and then Stephon Diggs. But there is a little bit of room to be concerned. Let's keep an eye on the situation moving forward. On the Steelers side of things, we saw Justin Fields, and we saw him fumble twice. Not a good look, especially since he's beginning first-team reps with this offense. We also saw Russell Wilson lead the boys out onto the field in classic Russell Wilson style, fully suited up, didn't play a snap in the game, but he was ready to hear his number called. I'll tell you that much. I think Russ is going to start for this team. I don't think it's going to be a true competition. I'm really concerned about how this offense is going to run. There are still reports that Brandon Ayuk might be heading to the Steelers. I am sick of it. I'm not buying it. They've already had like 2 weeks to figure it out. It's not happening. He's going to be a Niner. And I think really all the Steelers are doing are negotiating his contract for the 49ers. So if you're concerned about Brandon Ayuk coming in and sniping all of George Pickens's targets, I wouldn't be concerned at the moment, but we'll see how this offense runs with this new offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith. We'll see the type of snaps that Warren and Najee get this season. That's still up in the air. They did not show us much at all. Van Jefferson, the other primary wide receiver, it feels like they're going to be running 2 wide receiver sets for the majority of the season, running the ball a lot with what they got over there in Pittsburgh. We'll see how Van Jefferson does. We'll see if Roman Wilson can come off of this high ankle sprain and kind of earn his way into the field. I wouldn't be drafting him, though, because he really needed that opportunity to learn and grow with this offense. He didn't get it. So I wouldn't recommend drafting Van Jefferson or Roman Wilson because maybe he starts to incorporate himself into the offense later on in the season. It's George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, and that's all I'm drafting on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't want a running back. I don't want a quarterback for a whole season. Which brings us to the Eagles and the Ravens. The Eagles have a couple of exciting rookies. 6th-round draft pick, Johnny Wilson, 6'7", ran a 4.51 in the combine, which is blazing fast for a guy that size. I really liked him out of college. His counting statistics are pretty good. His yard per route run, his efficiency statistics and metrics are really, really good. Sounds like he's going to be incorporated in with the ones. And what I really liked out of his film, he did like 1 reception for like 7 yards or whatever. But what I really liked out of him in this preseason game is how well he was as a blocker. I think this team wants to run the football. Obviously, they do with Jalen Hurts and Saquon. And I think he's going to be a big part of it. And because of that, I think he's going to get red zone targets, a lot of them, actually. I think he could score 6-7 touchdowns this season as a 6th-round rookie. We'll see if he incorporates it himself into the offense, kind of in the middle part of the football field. I think it's going to be a Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown show in that instance. But I'd be slightly concerned about Devontae Smith's red zone usage if I was drafting or if I was a dynasty manager of him, because Johnny Wilson legitimately might get him off the field if he can block this well. The A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert blocking and Johnny Wilson blocking for Saquon and Jalen Hurts and get some bootlegs, get some RPO action in. I think it's going to be a tough thing to stop on the defense side of things in the red zone. I think Johnny Wilson might snipe a lot of Devontae Smith's red zone targets this year. We also saw rookie Will Shipley out of Clemson get a lot of play in this game, including a really impressive touchdown. I think they're going to use him as like a 3rd down passing option a lot to get Saquon a breather because he's going to be running the football a lot this year too as well. I would keep an eye on Will Shipley, and I am currently drafting him in the end of these 18-round best ball drafts. He's virtually always there. I think he's going to be the kind of true handcuff. I think if Saquon goes down, I think Will Shipley ends up inheriting like 60% of the snaps on this offense. I really do over guys like Kenneth Gainwell. So a lot to be excited about in this rookie class for the Philadelphia Eagles. On the other side of things, the Ravens showed us absolutely nothing. So all you can take away is the stars didn't play. Flowers, not a big surprise. Likely, not a big surprise. I think, if anything, what we can surmise out of this is Isaiah Likely is probably going to be the wide receiver 3 for this team. It's going to be Mark Andrews, Flowers, and then Likely, kind of in that order. I think Bateman is just toast. I don't think he's really ever showed any reason to get excited about him other than the coaching staff talking about him every single year, which just goes to show you sometimes what coaches say doesn't really matter at all. So I would definitely start drafting Isaiah Likely since he didn't play. Other than that, they didn't show us really anything at all. Not that they really had anything to show us. It's a pretty stable situation for the offense over there in Baltimore. Commanders and the Jets is a pretty easy one. Commanders on their side of things, Luke McCaffrey played a lot. Like, I think into like the fourth quarter. Brother of Christian McCaffrey. Some people were pretty hyped up about him. I was never really excited about him as a receiver prospect. And if you're still excited about him, you probably shouldn't be. I would probably be moving on from him in virtually all formats. I don't think he's really going to be valuable whatsoever. I don't think he's really ever going to make a roster meaningfully and contribute to the NFL. It's Jover for LMC over there for the Commanders. On the outside of the football, Breece Hall's backup, Agent Zero, Braylon Allen, a guy I've been super excited about throughout the whole draft process. I was over the moon with him. Didn't run the 40. I wasn't concerned. I don't think it mattered. The same way I saw Tank Dell in week 1 of the preseason last year, and I'm like, yep, that guy's a pro. I've seen all I needed to see. I saw like 3 plays out of Braylon Allen. I'm like, oh, yep, that guy's a pro. He was open in scramble situations. He had great instincts on what to do in broken plays. He picked up a blitz better than I've seen any rookie running back pick up a blitz in recent memory. He just got what it takes. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to trust him. And if Breece Hall goes down, he's going to be the bell cow there. He's going to get like 80% of snaps. He's just that good. And he's not going to turn 21 until January. So draft Braylon Allen as a handcuff back, especially if you're drafting a lot of Breece Hall. I would try to acquire him in Dynasty if their manager is sleeping on the wheel, although I don't think there's a lot of reason that a manager would be getting off him now. He's just that exciting. Braylon Allen had an absolutely spectacular performance. The way Braylon Allen operated, he looked like a professional running back in the NFL, and I think we're going to see him in the NFL for like 10 years because he's only 20. Bears and Bills. And this game was like, we were just sitting back and like watched a whole quarter of basically starters on starters. Is like, this is what we're going to have in, I think, like, was it like 24 days from when I'm recording right now? It is right around the corner. We're going to see ones-on-ones in a very short period of time, and it was really awesome. It was really a pleasure watching this game. I would definitely, if you have an opportunity, go back and watch the first quarter of this. Caleb Williams on that side of the football was absolutely spectacular. Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, obvious 1s and 2s on the team. Sounds like Odunze, feels like Odunze is going to get a lot of routes run on this team, but I think he's going to be on the sideline for most 2 wide receiver sets. And I still don't believe in him. I'll be honest. I don't think he's going to separate in the NFL. I don't think he's going to be anything special in the NFL. He's going to be like a starter, be like a wide receiver 2 on the team going forward once Keenan Allen is off the roster. I think it'll be Keenan Allen. I think it'll be DJ Moore. I was already rising on Caleb Williams, just thinking about it. Like, what if he is Andrew Luck after seeing him? The one thing that really surprised me, outside of his kind of throws on the move, his no-look screen pass to Swift, was his speed. I didn't expect to see the speed that I saw out of him. I know he ran the ball a lot in college, and when I watched it, I was like, I don't think that's really going to translate into the NFL. That totally flipped me. I think he was up against the ones, and I think he got faster. I think he's working on his speed in the offseason, and it shows. He was really, really fast. Took a slide, did a really good job protecting himself in that aspect as well. Just really good instincts, pocket presence. Just really feels like the Bears got one over there. Don't want to overreact to it too much. It is just preseason. But like I said, the throws on the move were incredible. And just the speed was undeniable, how fast he looked scrambling for the Bears in his first game. So Keenan Allen, I've already been in on him pretty much at cost. And then DJ Moore, I think I need to be a little bit higher on him, if I'm entirely honest, because I think he's got top 12 upside at the wide receiver position, despite having a rookie quarterback from day one. I think Caleb Williams has shown enough to us in his college career that he's the exception, could be an exception to the rule guy. And in the preseason, he showed us the exact same thing. I think the guys like him on the team. I think they believe in him. I think they know they got a guy in Caleb Williams already speaking up in the locker room. I think the Bears as a whole are going to struggle this year, but fantasy-wise, because they're going to struggle, I think they're going to score a lot of points. So draft Caleb Williams, definitely draft Keenan Allen, probably start drafting DJ Moore. Don't draft Adunze. He's going to score touchdowns this year, but I don't think he's going to. I think he's going to be an O'Dunes bust, if you ask me. On the other side of things, this is a really interesting game. The Bills actually played a lot of Keon Coleman, and I don't know if they played a lot of Keon Coleman to get him snaps and get him time with this starting offense, because as soon as they went 3 and out, as soon as he got off the field, it was the Curtis Samuel show. Like I think they're still going to use Curtis Samuel a lot. I am a little bit nervous about it after seeing Keon Coleman's usage in the first series. With that being said, he didn't look good. Like his routes look bad, his routes look sloppy. Still seems like a developmental thing. So I think my take on it for now is that Keon Coleman is just in there to get experience, and we don't need Curtis Samuel to get experience because he's been in the NFL forever. And Curtis Samuel, then they will be getting kind of like that starting role. I think they'll trust him a little bit more. Although I have to admit, I'm a little bit more nervous about it now than I was 2 weeks ago when I was just drafting Curtis Samuel every single chance I got. Curtis Samuel, I think, still a value in Dynasty, still a value in redraft leagues. Just a little bit of room to be concerned, but still where you're getting them. You know, if he doesn't absolutely explode into a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in the NFL, I think you got a good value there, and I think he's going to score a lot of touchdowns. I still think with Josh Allen, this offense can be efficient. And Dawson Knox was used a lot. They have a lot of 2 wide receiver sets, 2 tight end sets. So I think they're just going to run the ball a lot with Josh Allen and James Cook. And I think Dawson Knox is going to be a big part of this offense as like the true tight end on the team, with Kincaid playing like a hybrid slot tight end sort of role. Raiders and the Vikings. I guess we'll start with the biggest news out of the Vikings. Sam Darnold looked good in preseason for what it's worth. JJ McCarthy goes down with a meniscus injury. We'll see how bad it is. We probably won't know until the surgery is done. We probably won't really know until we get a report 2, 3, 4 weeks after surgery just to see how he's doing. I wouldn't count on JJ McCarthy playing any meaningful snaps this season. I think it's going to be the Sam Darnold show in Minnesota. We've seen this offense operate well with, in my opinion, worse quarterbacks, Josh Dobbs being included. I'm still in on Justin Jefferson with Sam Darnold. I think it's actually a good thing that Sam Darnold's the quarterback over JJ McCarthy for Justin Jefferson purposes. He's just going to feed him. And that's what you need out of your quarterback, is someone who's going to feed your guy. Justin Jefferson, I think, is probably going to be wide receiver 1 again this year overall. On the Raiders side of things, Aiden O'Connell did get the start over Gardner Minshew, which was if you watched our gambling podcast, our futures podcast, we did recommend a bet of Aiden O'Connell at, I think, plus 155 to start, just to take the first snap in the first game of the season. It's really starting to look like that's going to be the case. Gardner Minshew got more pass attempts in the game, but Aiden O'Connell got the start, and I expect them to start him pretty much no matter what at this point. He is the young guy in the room, and if you got a coin flip at the quarterback position, you go with the young guy because maybe he developed into something special. In terms of fantasy, the only one I would recommend drafting on the team would be Zamir White. I think he's just going to be the bell cow there. I don't know how good of an offense they're going to be running in Las Vegas with the interim head coach turned head coach. It never works. It's literally never worked in the NFL, to my knowledge. On the same team, we've seen interim head coaches like go on, like obviously Dan Campbell will be the first one that comes to mind, go on to another team and perform extremely well as the head coach. But I don't think that's necessarily what we're going to be seeing out of the Raiders situation. Freddie Kitchens being the one that really turns me off to that whole idea. Browns and the Packers. I think the big takeaway from the Brown side of things is they got a guy in Jameis Winston in terms of getting the boys ready. Those guys were all the way on his side in that pre-game speech. He might just be giving pre-game speeches even when Deshaun's starting. I love Jameis Winston, and I think there's a legitimate thing to be said about having a good leader on your team and having Deshaun Watson just be able to focus on playing quarterback. Because let's be honest, we need that year 3 post-scandal Mike Vick-like bounce-back season out of Deshaun Watson if you're a Cleveland Browns fan. They are allegedly also in the hunt for the Ayuk sweepstakes. I'm not buying it. Only the second time or third time I flip-flopped on this channel in terms of where I think Ayuk is going. I'm not buying it. I think he's a Niner. I think the Browns are going to stick with what they got. Jerry Jeudy didn't play. He's coming off his hamstring. He's doing one-on-ones in practice. He looks horrible. He looks really, really bad. So I think the real thing to keep an eye on there is Cedric Tillman, Elijah Moore, who's going to step up and kind of be that number 2, number 3 wide receiver on the team. And I think David Njoku is going to be the number 1 guy there behind Amari Cooper. On the Packers side of things, Romeo Doubs saw the biggest snap share. I'm currently back in on Romeo Doubs. I think he's just going to get the volume that is required out of a fantasy relevant player. And then, of course, we had the Wicks big touchdown reception over a guy who's not going to make this Cleveland Browns roster. So don't read too much into that. I like Wicks in Dynasty. I don't think I like him this year. There's just too much target competition, too much question marks in Green Bay, especially if Christian Watson can stay healthy with his hamstring stuff. All right, and Chiefs, Jags. The biggest news coming out of this game is Hollywood Brown going down with a pretty scary sternoclavicular injury. If you don't know what that is, it's this joint right here where your collarbone, where your clavicle attaches to your sternum, actually. So it is, he has to go to the hospital. It's dangerous because it compromises potentially your rib cage. So you could have compromised lungs, punctured lungs, basically. And of course, the rib cage is really important to protect your heart as well. So it's a pretty scary medical emergency when someone gets tackled like that. It's like a car accident injury, basically, is what we saw. This really rises up Xavier Worthy. Patrick Mahomes did a good job of getting the ball out of his hands when he did start with this team. Xavier Worthy was running routes with the ones. He's going to absolutely erupt this year. I promise you. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything in the future, but there's a pretty good chance that he becomes one of my guys leading into this season. I think Xavier Worthy ran a 4.21, broke a freshman receiving record in Texas, was missed a lot deep by yours, had a little bit of dropsy issues, but that was more in like the short kind of design target game as opposed to like the deep ball game. He didn't really drop any deep balls. Xavier Worthy didn't. I think that's kind of what he likes to do. I think that's what he'll do on the Kansas City offense. And this door being opened by the Marquise Hollywood Brown injury, I think is pretty similar to what we saw last year with Puka, where he got that work in with the ones even more so. And week 1 had opportunity. I'm not predicting that he's going to be the number 4 wide receiver this season, but I think he's going to be top 24 this season, which is an absolutely screaming value for where you're getting him in these drafts. So keep on drafting Xavier Worthy every chance you can. Doors wide open for him to succeed. On the Jag side of things, we saw Brian Thomas Jr. start with the ones. Christian Kirk actually didn't start. I think that's more of like a veteran thing. People are kind of reading into that, I think, a little bit too much. I still think Christian Kirk's going to be the one there. That would be so unprecedented that a healthy, true alpha male number 1 outperformed Calvin Ridley last year, went down with the groin injury late in the season. Christian Kirk's gonna be the number 1 there. Brian Thomas can be the number 2 there. He caught a great pass deep. He didn't separate much, but he caught it. It was like a 40-yard catch. So Brian Thomas currently being way underdrafted in all formats, including best ball, which is the sharpest ADP. So if you haven't done your rookie drafts yet, if you're doing your startup dynasty drafts right now, draft Brian Thomas. He's, barring injury, just going to be a stud on this offense with maybe a little bit of inconsistency. And I think the more he plays football, the better he's going to get because he's a little bit late starter to the sport of football. Brian Thomas, I think sky's the limit for him, and could develop into a true alpha wide receiver, but he doesn't have to because he's got Christian Kirk on the other side of the football, which is going to be super beneficial for him. Evan Ingram is going to eat up a lot of targets for that team. I don't really care. It's going to be the Brian Thomas show. It's going to be the Christian Kirk show, and it's going to be the Evan Ingram show. It's a I think probably the most underrated offense in terms of fantasy football leading into the NFL season. Bucks and the Bengals. I think we got a running back 2 competition going on here between Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker was everybody's favorite film guy going into last season, went undrafted. A lot of us were left scratching our heads why. I think he had injury concerns coming out of college. I think maybe some character concerns coming out of college. He may be proving himself to this coaching staff to really start threatening Rachaad White, who's been perennially inconsistent, perennially inefficient. for this offense. He turned it up a little bit towards the end last year, which kind of saved his fantasy football season. But I think Sean Tucker should be someone who is stash him on your dynasty roster, keep an eye on him. So I think that's the big story, because we already know who the wide receivers are going to be on this team. The big question mark is who's going to be that number 2 running back, and will they kind of start taking over, gain that 1B behind Rachaad White in this offense. And probably the biggest news of the weekend, so much so I had to learn how to say this guy's name. Andre Iosivas, I believe, is how you pronounce it. I'm going to start calling him Yoshi just for the sake of easiness. I think Yoshi is going to be pretty relevant on this team. I think he's going to start. And the other big takeaway is Jermaine Burton. It might be over before it starts. Jermaine Burton was running with the 3s, running with the 4s. He did really great against used car salesmen in a couple of weeks, but I don't really care. Iosivas is going to be, he was a developmental guy coming into the NFL. And I think we saw him develop. And I think he's going to start. I think he's going to be like on the field like 80% of the time, playing that slot role for Joe Burrow, which will be extremely valuable in fantasy football, especially where you're getting him. He is insanely underdrafted, going like 16, 17, 18th round in best ball at the moment. You might want to go kick the tire on a dynasty manager. Check your, if it's not a deep league, check your waivers and see if Iosivas is available. Because if he is, he's going to be a starter on this, what we assume is going to be an explosive offense if Joe Burrow stays healthy, which is going to be obviously extremely valuable in fantasy football. So that's a big, big news story. And if you can offload Jermaine Burton for a bag of chips, I would go ahead and do that right now. 49ers, for what it's worth, Josh Dobbs played all right. They didn't show us much in terms of their offense. They really never do, which is probably why another reason they're not really excited to get Ayuk back on the roster anytime soon. Jordan Mason will be maybe the number 2 back there. He played all right in his first preseason game. Elijah Mitchell, he's like the only healthy running back on the team at the moment. Elijah Mitchell is out with sounds like a bad hamstring again. Guy's got a lot of history with injuries. I wouldn't be super excited about drafting him anymore as the handcuff to Christian McCaffrey, who's already got a calf. So a lot of injuries, a lot of concerns. Pearsall was out. Cowing didn't play as far as I can tell. I know he's been a little bit banged up in camp. Maybe they didn't trust him, or maybe they're just expecting him to maybe have to play some games early on in the season, which would be hilarious and awesome for me. I really like Cowing's college production. We'll see what it's like in the NFL. Hopefully we'll get a chance to look at him in preseason. If not, maybe that just means he's the starter there and it's a secret. So that we didn't learn a lot from the 49ers side of things. Tony Pollard for the Titans got the first snap, and then it was Tajay Spears with, I think, the next 2 runs in the game. It's going to be probably a 1A, 1B thing, and they're trying to figure out who's going to be the 1A. If I had to put my money on it, I think it would probably be Tajay Spears by the end of the season. Probably not something you should be super excited about targeting anyway. I think they're really going to struggle on offense, especially with the DeAndre Hopkins injury early on this preseason. They got Will Levis throwing the football. He was throwing his helmet around towards the goal line in a preseason game, which I love. But I can't get behind pretty much anything with this offense in Tennessee. Which brings me to Seattle and the LA Chargers. On the Charger side of things, Kamani Vidal healthy, didn't play. Saw people like, oh, he's going to have a big role in this offense because also J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards didn't play in this game. I think it's Jover. He's a 6th round running back, small school guy. Didn't impress me with his small school film. So I think I've said from several times on this podcast, he's a practice squad guy. He's never going to play in the NFL. And I stand by that. I just a hype guy for whatever reason. People fell in love with his name early on in the process this year, and he's just not going to be fantasy relevant. There's a lot more depth on this Chargers running back room than I think a lot of people understand. On the Seattle side of things, Charbonnet played a lot. He played a lot, which tells me Kenneth Walker didn't play. Kenneth Walker's going to be the bell cow. He's going to be a 3-down back there. I think, in my opinion, undervalued. I think this offense can be better this year without Pete Carroll behind the reins of the offense. Charbonnet is going to be number 2. I think Kenneth Walker is going to get a lot of touches this year. And I think they're going to utilize him in the passing game. I think he can figure it out. He's a good enough athlete to figure out how to catch a dump off pass, for goodness sakes. So Charbonnet, I think, would be kind of downhill. A lot of people are kind of thinking he might be like 40% guy. I think he's like a 20% guy. I really think we might see like CMC like snap counts for Kenneth Walker. Granted, in a less powerful offense, we think in Seattle, Geno Smith is going to be the starter there. So we'll see if he can have a bounce back season. I think it's going to be the DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker show in Seattle. Saints Cardinals, no one really played. Wasn't a massive surprise outside of Taysom Hill getting snaps at the X wide receiver position. Rashid Shaheed has a little bit of a hamstring tightness, so I would expect him to kind of fill in that X role. I don't know what they're doing in New Orleans. Spencer Rattler played a good amount. He looked all right. He got banged up. I think he got like a chest injury or a concussion or something diving into the end zone. On the Cardinal side of things, we didn't see Michael Wilson play. They didn't start their starters, which tells me Michael Wilson is still in line to the number 2 role, hopefully, assuming Marvin Harrison Jr. absolutely is that guy that we all expect him to be. Where Marvin Harrison's going in most of these drafts, I'm like entirely out of him. I think he's way, way too high. Obviously, if you can get him in Dynasty, get him in Dynasty. I still believe in him there. Kyler Murray is, I think, probably the most undervalued guy on this team where he's going in drafts at the moment. Broncos and Colts. The Colts had Jonathan Taylor wearing one of those soft Guardian cap things on top of his helmet. Didn't look that bad on the white helmet, honestly. He's going to get a lot of play this year. Anthony Richardson's going to get a lot of play this year. They didn't look great as an offense. I'm not at all concerned about it. A small sample size. We still got to be concerned about the Josh Downs injury. A.D. Mitchell still not really incorporating himself into the offense. I wasn't a fan of him leading in with the Josh Downs injury. I'm still not. I don't think it's going to work for him in the NFL. It's going to be the Pittman show. It's going to be Jonathan Taylor show. It's going to be the AR show. And after that, maybe Josh Downs gets a little bit of play, but I would not be buying in on the A.D. Mitchell hype unless he just falls really, really far and you get him with like your last pick in a redraft. On the Broncos side of things, pretty interesting. Javonte Williams and Stidham kind of got the 2 starts for the first quarter, and then it was Jaleel McLaughlin and the Bo Nix show after that. I think we're going to have a quarterback running back competition there. Maybe Javonte still has an opportunity to get cut. P. Ryan had a really, really bonehead play where he kind of like volleyed the ball up into the air for an interception. So I think his probably head's on the chopping block if I had to guess. And we might see a 1A, 1B situation, Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin, which doesn't get me too excited because I think this offense is going to stink at the end of the day. But I think Jaleel McLaughlin is a good enough discount in most of these drafts where it's like, hey, maybe he ends up just being the bell cow. Maybe the offense is a little bit better. I think same thing with Bo Nix. I think he's going to end up being the starter there, but I don't think there's a lot of reason to be excited for any of the guys on this team. Marvin Mims got some play like late into the game. If anything, I think Cortland Sutton is going to be the number 1 overall. When they had one wide receiver set early on in the first quarter, and Cortland Sutton was the guy out there. Tim Patrick's back, which is really exciting. We'll see what he looks like. I think he's going to be the starter. I think it's going to be Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick as the 1s and 2s for this probably lackluster passing offense. So nothing to be too excited about, except there's a fun competition. Might be fun to watch the rest of the preseason, but after that, it's probably not going to be super fun. And finally, what was also a really fun game, doesn't really mean anything in terms of the NFL, was the Rams and the Cowboys. We saw Stetson Bennett, 2-time national champion, take on Trey Lance, who had less than 5 yards per pass attempt. I think it's pretty funny that everyone's complaining. Trey Lance never really had a real fair shot in the NFL. I'm like, well, producing preseason, buddy. I think both guys are kind of donezo. It's Jover for both of them in terms of like any sort of starting quarterback role in their future. So for dynasty purposes, that kind of stinks. Rico Dowdle got a cameo. Zeke didn't start, which wasn't surprising. Dowdle had a couple of carries. He looked fine. I still think at the end of the day, when McCarthy is competing for a new contract, either with the Cowboys or somebody else, with Dak Prescott doing the same thing, them trotting out the corpse of Ezekiel Elliott over Rico Dowdle will be malpractice pretty obviously early on in the season, week 2, week 3. It'll flip. I think Zeke will probably start the season and he'll suck. He'll just be really, really bad. And it's going to be a CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott show over there in Dallas. Important note for the Rams, Blake Corum didn't play as far as I know. He's healthy. We don't have official injury reports, but we usually have a pretty good idea if someone's banged up, not practicing, based on the camp reports coming out from the beat writers. That's not been the case. So that tells me that he's already kind of earned his second string role behind Kyren Williams in this offense. I am still a big believer in Kyren Williams. Hit 5 yards per carry last year. It's not easy to do that. So obviously Puka didn't play. I think we all knew that wasn't going to happen. He's a bona fide starter as well. But I think Blake Corum, a good handcuff, if you can get the right price for him. In Best Ball Underdog, he's like being priced as like a back end starter, which I don't think is a good value whatsoever, even if he is on a good offense. But I think Kyren Williams, Blake Corum are the 1 and 2 over there in LA. And that is it. Thank you for watching. That is as quickly as brief a recap as I could provide for every single team. Let me know if you like it. I'll do it again for week 2. We will see how much information we will get out of them. And if anything changes, please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.